Saltzman.
Here.
Udaley.
Here.
Fritz.
Here.
Fish. Wheeler.
Here. Good morning, legal counsel.
Good morning. Welcome to the Portland City Council. The City Council represents all Portlanders and meets to do the city's business. The presiding officer preserves order and decorum during the City Council meetings so everyone can feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe. To participate in council meetings, you may sign up in advance with the council clerk's office for communications to briefly speak about any subject. You may also sign up for public testimony on resolutions or the first readings of ordinances. Your testimony should address the matter being considered at the time. When testifying, please state your name for the record. Your address is not necessary. Please disclose if you are a lobbyist. If you are representing an organization, please identify it. The presiding officer determines the length of testimony. Individuals generally have 3 minutes to testify unless otherwise stated. When you have 30 seconds left, a yellow light goes on. When your time is done, a red light goes on. If you are in the audience and would like to show your support for something that is said, please feel free to do a thumbs up. If you want to express that you do not support something, please feel free to do a thumbs down. Disruptive conduct, such as shouting or interrupting testimony or council deliberations, will not be allowed. If there are disruptions, a warning will be given that further disruption may result in the person being ejected for the remainder of the meeting. After being ejected, a person who fails to leave a meeting is subject to arrest for trespass. Thank you for helping your fellow Portlanders feel welcome, comfortable, respected, and safe.
Very good, thank you. Before we get to communications, just one housekeeping item. We'll read it later in the agenda, but if anybody is here specifically for item 921, ratifying a successor collective bargaining agreement between the city and the PPCOA, that is going to be moved off of the agenda today. So if anybody is here specifically for that, I just want to give you a heads up. First up is communications, and it's my understanding, Sue, that items 902, 3, and 4, the individuals would like to come up together as a group. Is that correct?
Correct.
Very good, thank you.
Item 902, 903, 904. Request of Gary Coons, Shelley Caldwell, and Andrew Pritchard to address council regarding Oregon Air National Guard overhead descent landing maneuver. Come on up.
Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
The microphones slide around about this much distance, seems to work okay.
Bear with me, I'm a little bit new at this, but my name is Gary Coons. I'm a Portland native. I went to school in Portland. I've retired from the Bonneville Power Administration. I'm here today representing the East Columbia Neighborhood Association. I'm the Neighborhood Association chairman. So, Mayor Wheeler and members of the City Council, thank you for the opportunity to testify. Today, we're here to request your assistance in dealing with the Port of Portland and the Oregon Air National Guard. Since May last year, North and Northeast Portland neighborhoods have been involved with a test and evaluation of a spiral down landing pattern the Oregon Air National Guard wants to implement. The pattern has been tested before and always rejected at the west end of PDX. Most recently, in 2002, it was the port that rejected the maneuver because it increased noise within neighborhoods close to PDX, and it introduced noise to neighborhoods that previously had none. I've given the clerk 7 copies of a letter from 2002 written by the Port of Portland where they reject the Oregon Air National Guard's request for this maneuver. Working through the PDX Citizen Noise Advisory Committee, neighbors and neighborhood-related groups submitted petitions, letters, and testimony that convinced the committee to recommend restrictions on this landing maneuver. Upon receiving those recommendations, the Oregon Air National Guard decided to reject those they didn't like. This landing pattern causes the fighter jets to pass as low as 400 feet above our homes while making a hard turn. It is startling and loud. I'm requesting that you reach out on a government-to-government basis and ask that the advisory committee recommendations be followed. It is wrong to introduce this industrial level activity to our residential setting. It is wrong to run a year-long public process and then reject the outcome because it isn't what the Guard wants. This will destroy the public's faith and confidence in our form of government, And I would be happy to come in and meet one-on-one with any of your staffs and bring details to their attention. And I've got a quick demonstration to illustrate what I'm talking about. Hey, I'm going great. So here's a large visual of the PDX area. And a conventional landing would line up on the runway about 10 miles out, and they come in and land on the runway. The Oregon Air Guard has typically done this line up way out here and come into the runway. And the new maneuver is to bring 4 aircraft, it's too cumbersome, assume this is 4, in at 250 knots, 2,500 feet, and at the end of the runway, the first airplane breaks off in a spiral. 5 seconds later, the second airplane breaks off in a spiral, then the third, then the fourth. When they're landing in an eastern flow that is coming from the west, the third and fourth airplanes on this end of the airport actually overfly Cully. But these conceptual patterns that are shown here are roughly what they do. I put on some dots. The guard would typically be at 300 feet above the river at this red dot if they were coming straight in. In this new pattern, they are going over my home, my neighbors' homes, lots of our homes, and they're about 400 feet up. Although they've throttled back to a fast idle, you hear the turbine noise, you hear the airframe noise, you do hear some thrust noise, but it is gosh darn startling. It is not as loud as a takeoff, but suddenly they pop up over your neighbor's roof, they pop up over the neighbor's trees. Whammo! You've got F-15 right there. It's visible for about 5 seconds, and I guess my time's up. Then it goes down over the neighbor's house.
Thank you.
My name is Shelley Caldwell. I'm the chair of the Woodlawn Neighborhood Association, and I'm here because we've got several members in our community that have approached me for answers as to why this is happening and why they're being woken up and startled and left shaken by the noise. So I'm just here supporting the idea that we should encourage the Air National Guard to not be doing this.
To the esteemed members of Portland City Council, thank you for your service as guardians of the public's ears. Please know that you have the opportunity to improve the quality of life for thousands of Portlanders, and it wouldn't even take a dime out of Portland's budget. My name is Andrew Pritchard, and I've lived in the Cully neighborhood for 12 years. As the founder and spokesperson for NoJetsPortland.com, I have sought to increase knowledge and awareness about the issue of OCDAs over our homes and schools. This is, amongst other things, a public health issue, and I'm convinced that if more people know what is going on, and people could imagine their own neighborhood and schools underneath a brand new flight path, we could bring a stop to these industrial noise polluting practice maneuvers over civilian residential areas. Therefore, my colleagues and I ask that City Council take action. Please have the Government Relations Office contact the Oregon Air National Guard and ask them to follow the recent recommendations of PDX's Citizens Noise Advisory Committee. The OCDA, the Overhead Continuous Descent Approach, is a complicated, convoluted issue. Some people think that we oppose the Guard's activities or their fighter jets in general. Let me be clear, this is not the case. We support the Guard's mission and understand and appreciate the important work they do, as well as the unique fact that there is a military base at a major civilian airport. However, many Portlanders, including the neighborhoods of Cully, Concordia, East Columbia, Roseway, Sumner, Woodlawn, and Piedmont, specifically object to the Guard's use of the OCDA over civilian residential areas. They all say no to a practice that fundamentally alters the soundscape and psychological landscape of the city. Portlanders have a decades-long track record of opposing the use of the OCDA because it's not appropriate to establish a new military flight path over historically unaffected areas, and it establishes an industrial practice in residential areas. For decades, the Guard was mission combat ready and practiced the OCDA elsewhere, and it can do so again. The Guard's actions speak louder than its words. Its push to expand the use of a maneuver that has been officially opposed by the neighborhood associations of the impacted areas belies its role as a good neighbor that says the right things. The Guard claims to care about public process and community feedback, but at the end of the day, it once again blatantly ignored the desires of Portlanders, your constituents, and did whatever it felt like doing in spite of a lengthy public process. Who will keep the Guard in check? Incrementally, the Guard is flying the OCDA more frequently and over more people. For surrounding communities, it's death by 1,000 cuts. When does it stop? When is enough enough? By its own admission, the Guard's justifications for using the OCDA in Portland are its convenience and budgetary considerations. The Guard is compromising the peace and quality of life for thousands of Portlanders in order to protect the peace and our quality of life and save on gas money? It doesn't make sense. Why does this matter? Noise pollution, it's real. The World Health Organization agrees. At the Citizens Noise Advisory Committee, Portlanders testified that the noise pollution caused by the OCDA causes physical, mental, and psychological issues. It can trigger PTSD. People can't work from home or hear themselves think. In my home, the low-flying fighter jets shake floors, windows, and walls and induce the awful sensation of your chest cavity and skull vibrating. It feels terrible, and I know I'm not the only one who has lost a lot of sleep because of the OCDA. Put yourself in someone else's shoes just for a moment. Just imagine if the Oregon Department of Transportation built a highway overpass directly over your home and did so without your consent and without compensating you. How would you feel? What if the Oregon Air National Guard flew a brand new flight path over your home, a home that was nowhere near military flight paths when you chose to move there? What happens when the next generation of fighter jets, which have even louder noise signatures, come to PDX? Without consent and without compensation, you would feel violated because your rights as a citizen are being abrogated in the interest of saving gas money or bureaucratic inertia. You would feel violated, as I do now, because the sovereignty of your home, your little slice of the American dream, is being sacrificed. The OCDA is an industrial practice that is incompatible with residential settings. It is a failure of imagination of leaders to not see that the practice of these maneuvers is unacceptable, whether through or above civilian residential neighborhoods. Just because the OCDA occurs hundreds or thousands of feet above your head doesn't make it acceptable. Now's the time to address the evergreen issue of social equity. The OCDA usually does not occur over the wealthiest neighborhoods. The Cully neighborhood, which bears the brunt of the negative effects of the OCDA, is the most diverse neighborhood in the entire state. Many people in this lower income neighborhood don't have the means, knowledge, or skills to engage with the public process and stick up for themselves. The guy who runs the site, the Cully Tire Fire, is somehow still in business. Now the Guard says it will expand its use of noise polluting maneuver. Is there any regulatory oversight for those who pollute in Cully? Marginalized communities are no less deserving of a noise pollution-less quality of life. Portland deserve to be treated equally regardless of color, wealth, or class. Thank you for considering that the council take action with regard to this and make the recommendations to Portland's Citizens Noise Advisory Committee. You can make a real difference in the lives of Portlanders for years to come. Your help is appreciated.
Thank you. And I know Commissioner Udaley wanted to say something in a moment, but could I ask you just a couple of follow-up questions?
Yes, absolutely.
So to be clear, my question should not imply that I'm not going to get involved or that I don't care. I'm truly asking these questions out of curiosity. So the Oregon National Guard is a branch of state government, is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
That is my understanding as well, that it would be a branch of the Oregon Military Department. And my next question would be, have you had a chance to meet with any of your state representatives on this subject? Because
Yes.
I believe the airport is in the House Speaker's district, if I'm not mistaken.
I've met with Senator Lou Frederick. I've been in touch with him, and we have also had personal contact with the new base commander of the 142nd Air Wing.
And what was
Colonel Sidler.
were your conversations productive?
We basically discussed our concern about our perception of the issue, and that due to the lack of institutional knowledge there, our concern is that the next base commander, a couple few years down the road, is going to come in and say, hey, why don't we just do this thing more often or more frequently, not realizing that the community over the past couple decades has said, no, we don't like this, we've already been through this, please stop doing this. And so what's to stop them from in the future doing that? And so I think we made our point clear on that, but it's not anything that he will put in writing. We asked him to make the commitments in writing, and the Guard said no.
Okay, and just one final question. The maneuver that you're describing is a new maneuver, is that correct? And why are they doing it? I wasn't really clear on why they're...
So the overhead continuous descent approach, it's basically this corkscrew landing maneuver. The reason they do it and practice it is for landing in battlefield scenarios or on aircraft carriers. It helps them to avoid getting shot out of the sky if they're under enemy fire, instead of just a long straight in thing, which historically they've always been part of the same airflow traffic as Alaska Airlines and Delta and United and whoever else, but they want to practice this one specific thing that makes their landing pattern bulge out into civilian residential areas. And that's what we very specifically object to.
Okay,
But
one more
they've
question.
done it before, meaning
So they've done
practice.
they've done it before, and they've done it for a few years now, but they want to expand its use of it now to, his neck of the
Well, they
woods.
attempted it in the 80s, and it was too loud. They tested it over the East Columbia area of Portland in 2002.
and
It
in-
was too loud, the port rejected it, and now they've come back and tested it over that area again.
And in fact, we're going to give you copies of a letter from the guy who was the head of the Port of Portland, of the airport, Steve Schreiber, where he said, this is not acceptable now or at any point in the future.
And
But- and
does
yet-
the port have control over this issue then? Do they play a regulatory role?
The port, as
Yes
the
and no.
airport proprietor, can make recommendations to the FAA. I believe we're getting a runaround from the port. The port tells me, and I've met with them several times, that the Guard will do what they want. Yet in the 2002 letter, we see that Steve Schreiber was going to recommend to the FAA that the maneuver not be allowed. We believe that it's the FAA that's the controlling agency, not the port, but the port can recommend. And we don't believe that the Guard gets to do whatever they want unless the FAA approves it.
I see. Okay, thank you. I appreciate those clarifications. Commissioner Daley.
So thank you for coming. I live in Woodlawn. I do not live in the flight path, but I have experienced this in other parts of the neighborhood, and it is truly alarming. So I definitely sympathize. It sounds like you know, and just for everyone, for clarity's sake, the city of Portland and our noise office has no jurisdiction over any noise related to aircraft in flight.
Yes.
However, I can certainly tap my resources to support you however I can, and I do have some follow-up questions. I don't want to take up too much more time, but if you could connect with Jamie Duhamel, my direct staff over there, I'll have some follow-up questions. It is my understanding that it is the Port of Portland that has jurisdiction, but maybe.
So to be brief, it's a really confusing,
Yeah.
convoluted alphabet soup of acronyms.
Yes.
And who has jurisdiction and right.
Yeah.
I don't think the council has time this morning to
Yeah.
talk about it, but we
Sure.
came here today to stoke your interest in the
Yeah.
subject, and we'd love the opportunity to come in and talk to you and educate you more about the subject.
Yeah, and I'd be happy to raise the issue with the speaker as well, so, thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you for coming.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate- That was
Thank you.
very informative. Thank you. Next individual, please.
Item 905, request of Francis Quimps to address council regarding fostering civility.
And before you speak, thank you, by the way, for providing us written testimony. It is my understanding, and I'm looking at legal counsel, that we cannot use graphic language because we have an FCC license as we are broadcasting. So if maybe we have the written testimony, if you could maybe abridge or
Allude?
not.
I'm happy to do that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning, and thank you for your time. My name is Frances Quimps. I've been a citizen here since 1997. I have gone ahead and spoke with the Human Rights Commission here about this issue, and I have asked them to relay my thoughts that I shared with them that I'm sharing with you today. And I'd also say I am more than happy to work with anyone, anywhere on this topic and issue. I am here today to plead for you, our leaders, to be better examples of civility. Today, I fear for my wife's safety. In the last 6 months, my wife has been harassed in the vicinity of her workplace 3 times. Forgive my language, and I'm going to try to alter it as best as I can. She experienced a transgender person calling her an effing DYKE. We had an elderly woman scream coexist at her as she was being followed, and a black man referred to my wife as a long-nosed white B word, an F word, FAGGOT. He called her an it. He screamed, "I hate white people," and threatened to F her up while bystanders stood by and said nothing. Mr. Wheeler, you asked for an administration and leader that cares for all citizens and cares for safety of families. Yet my family today, because city leaders seem more interested in partisanship and pet projects, is less safe today. Respecting citizens includes trying to protect them from undocumented rapists and criminals, needles left in family yards and parks, and not inhibiting citizens and workers from moving about safely due to occupations and rampant homelessness. I believe I speak for what we call a silenced majority when I say we want a mayor and city council who listens and doesn't pretend to speak for all Portlanders. We want a city council who takes the first step to reach out to those whom they may disagree and explore ways to work together. Do you want your legacy to be one of new residents leaving for fear of safety, long-term residents turned into second-class citizens so that those who yell the loudest can intimidate an entire neighborhood, and minorities harassing and hating other minorities? We need leaders who foster civility and delight in working with creative and diverse ideas so that our city can be an example to this country of respectful discourse and listening without prejudice. I know all of you work hard, and I do thank you for it. I simply ask for you to consider these words and do your best to make every citizen here, me, my wife, and everyone, including those you disagree with, to feel welcomed again. Then we can truly have a city we can all be proud of and a safer community to be a part of. Thank you again.
Thank you. Appreciate your coming in. That concludes communications. Have any items been pulled from the consent agenda, Sue?
Items 907 and 908.
907 and 908. Please call the roll on the remainder of the consent.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz. Aye. Wheeler.
Aye, the consent agenda is adopted. Next item is time certain 906.
906. Appoint Crystalie Crane, David Barnard, Khoi Vu, and Hamila Dozer, and reappoint Daniel Franco Nunez to the Human Rights Commission for terms to expire August 28, 2021.
Very good. Colleagues, the Human Rights Commission, as you know, works to eliminate discrimination and bigotry, to strengthen intergroup relationships, and to foster greater understanding, inclusion, and justice for those who live, work, study, worship, travel, and play in the city of Portland. In doing so, the Commission is guided by the principles embodied in the United Nations Universal Declaration of Human Rights. During this time in our city and our country, we need the Portland Human Rights Commission and the role that it fills more than ever before. The core mission of the HRC and the work of the dedicated commissioners, both who are seated now, have served in the past, and like yourselves, will serve in the future, are pivotal in furthering the cohesive message we need to send as a city government to our fellow community members. We need to commit as a city to employing a human rights lens in all we do across bureaus, and we're fortunate to have individuals like yourselves who are willing to serve as volunteers to ensure this mission and keep us all accountable. Here with us to introduce our appointees is Tatiana Alahalde with the Office of Equity and Human Rights. Come on up. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Can they join me up here?
Please, yeah,
Okay.
by all means,
I think
thank you.
We might need more chairs. but-
Oh, two more chairs.
Buenos días.
Buenos dias.
Thank you for having us. Tatiana Lejalde with the Office of Equity and Human Rights, Equity and Human Rights Advisor. Good morning, Mayor Wheeler, Commissioner Fritz, Commissioner Udaly, and Commissioner Saltzman. I'm really happy to be here today to introduce to you 4 new stellar appointees to the Portland Human Rights Commission. They will be joining an already amazing group of dedicated volunteer community members who serve in their capacity as human rights commissioners. So with me today, I will say all their names and then give them an opportunity to say a few things about themselves. To my right, I have Khoi Vu, Jamila Dozier, Dr. Crystal Crane, and David Bernard. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Khoi Vu. I am currently the program director of Open School, which is a nonprofit organization that serves underprivileged youth. I am also a board member of the United Nations Association of Portland and a board member, advisory board member with the Asian Family Center, ERCO. Many of them are partners of City of Portland. I come to you today as a woman, as a first-generation immigrant refugee, as a community member who've lived in Portland, an American who've lived in Portland for almost 40 years now. Someone who cares and loves her community, who has been doing social services and social justice work for the last 2 decades. And want to make sure that our communities are represented by everyone in our communities, and that we are serving the most vulnerable populations of our community, which I consider my community as being part of that. So we are here. I feel that this is an incredible honor, but also an incredible privilege to be here sitting in front of all of you today. It's not an everyday opportunity for most of us to have this space, this platform, to share our needs, to share our voices, to amplify our voices in front of our communities. So thank you so much for this opportunity. I look forward to serving our community in a different capacity, and I look forward to working alongside all of you.
Great, thank you for being here.
Hi, my name is Jamila Dozier. I am the Assistant Director of Student Engagement over at Reed College. I live in the Woodstock area. A few months ago, I earned my master's degree at Lewis and Clark College in Student Affairs Administration. I have extensive experience in restorative justice, crisis response, and campus responsibilities under Title IX around campus sexual assault. I focus a lot of my research on the campus responsibilities around sexual assault. I interned with the Attorney General's Sexual Assault Task Force, and I currently am a volunteer with Call to Safety. I'm excited to be here today to bring that experience and continue to work towards mitigating inequality by centering the most vulnerable. It is an honor to be here, and I'm very excited to serve our community and work closely with you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Hi, good morning. My name is Dr. Crystal Crane. Again, thank you for having us and giving us the opportunity to introduce ourselves to you. I am an assistant professor of practice in the School of Social Work at Portland State University. Came here from Oakland, California, where I served for 4 years as a commissioner on juvenile justice on the county level. And so I'm excited to be here now in Portland and have the opportunity to work on the commission. One of the things that I'm really interested in doing is making sure that we have a participatory process so the decisions that are being made on these issues are being able to reach the corners and the cracks where meetings aren't being held or where people aren't able to get to. I want to make sure that we can get to them. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Crane.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm David Barnard, and it is a real honor and something I'm very grateful for to have an opportunity to serve the city through the Human Rights Commission, especially with amazing people that I've just met for the first time this morning. Having grown up in Chicago in the 1950s and 60s, a very turbulent period in our nation's history, including the police riot that was about exactly 50 years ago this week outside the Democratic National Convention. I have always been formed, I think, by a real sensitivity to issues regarding human rights and social justice, and made my career 40 years of teaching ethics and human rights law at medical schools and law schools. I retired about a year and a half ago, and with more time to contribute, the Human Rights Commission seemed like a really wonderful way of staying in touch with that, especially the human rights side of my work. Last night, it turns out that my wife and I saw the movie about Mr. Rogers. I don't know if any of you are old enough to have watched Mr. Rogers, but he was famous for singing a song to his the kids on his program that we like you because of who you are, just being yourself. And it occurred to me during the movie that in a way that sums up the ideal of the international human rights movement, which was rather radical notion that people are entitled to certain conditions and opportunities to live a healthy and dignified life simply by being human beings, without regard to any other attributes. And it's the role of governments, including city governments, to respect and protect and fulfill those rights. Now, we've already heard this morning that there are many people in our city who don't feel confident that their government will in fact do that. And so I think participation on the Human Rights Commission will be one way to be a voice to make sure that happens. So thank you very much for this opportunity, and it's wonderful to meet all of you today.
Thank you.
Also, if I may, we have one reappointment for Daniel Franco Nunez. He has served faithfully to the commission. You all have at different times invited him to give invited testimony for the Human Rights Commission. He's not able to be here today, but I'm thrilled that he wanted to be reappointed, so thank you.
Excellent. Thank you. Colleagues, any questions, or I'll entertain a motion on the report?
Move to accept the report.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Please call the roll, Sue.
Well, welcome all of you to the Human Rights Commission, and thank you for your willingness to serve. And I was reading your bios here and listening to you, and you're obviously very well qualified, and I look forward to your contributions. Aye.
Udaley.
Well, congratulations on your appointments, and thank you for your service. You're all exciting additions to the commission, and I've already made notes on things I want to talk to each of you about. I haven't had a chance to interact with the commission as much as I'd like to in these first 19 months here, so I'm looking forward to meeting with you and discovering ways that we can collaborate. Aye.
Fritz.
Well, thank you, Mayor Wheeler and Tatiana, for bringing forward this amazing group of people willing to serve. Dr. Crane, your words about participatory values are absolutely my core values, so I'm very much looking forward to becoming the Commissioner in charge of the Office of Equity and Human Rights and being someone who will serve you as the Human Rights Commission, just as the Human Rights Commission serves the whole of Portland. And indeed, it serves to advise the whole of Council, so I appreciate Commissioner Udaley's comments that we all value the work that you do and look forward to amplifying those voices, as you said. So I would have to say, Mr. Barnett, that I'm old enough to have watched Mr. Rogers with my children. Indeed, as an immigrant to the United States, that was one of the things in the Reagan years that gave me hope that there was a core value in the United States for neighborliness and kindness and treating people with respect. And so I think it's particularly important at this time that we get back to that. I think we have lost it both in Portland and nationally, and there's a huge opportunity for us to do the right thing. And Tatiana, thank you for your ongoing diligence and work. I'm very much looking forward to working with you again.
Thank you.
Wheeler.
Well, the older I get, the less I believe things happen just due to happenstance. And this last few days has been an extraordinary example. It's provided numerous extraordinary examples of the importance of the work that you do and why there is an urgency to the work of the commission. It is a coincidence that the last person who testified during communications came in and talked about her and her wife not feeling safe in this community. And I'm going to follow up with her because there were a lot of things in that story that were quite frankly shocking, and I did not feel comfortable asking her to explore that in detail in public. But those kinds of stories of people who are being targeted because of who they are becoming more and more frequent. And we know that just factually there is more reporting of this kind of bias and hatred nationally as well as here in the state of Oregon and locally. And we need to figure out, just as Dr. Crane said, how do we get into the nooks and crannies? How do we engage people? And how do we get, as the prior speaker said, how do we get beyond partisanship and get back to a sense of community? And what also happened this weekend, of course, was Senator John McCain died. And even that became politicized. And that, to me, I was thinking a lot about that this weekend. It's just, how did something like the passing of an individual, whether you agree with them or disagree with them, how did it become so politicized and so divisive? And what does it say about our society that things have become this divided, that we almost look for opportunities to disagree rather than finding the points of commonality? And if we cannot figure out those points of commonality, it is going to be very hard for us to thrive as a society moving forward. So not to put too much burden on your shoulders, but the reality is the farther I get into this, I am actually seeing the quality of people who want to engage on these kinds of potentially emotional, potentially complex, potentially divisive issues. I'm seeing the quality of our candidates actually go up astronomically, and you are representative of that trend. I could not be more happy to see the four of you stepping forward at this time. I know you're very busy, all of you. I know that you could be doing a million other things. I know the pay is not good, but I couldn't be happier that we have people like you in this community who want to help us not only be accountable, but help us actually find that way towards being a community that is unified around basic principles of justice and fairness. So thank you for stepping forward. I vote aye. The report is accepted. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
Next item, please, will be item number 90. Oh, sorry, that's not what I want. Could you, Sue, could you please read item 921? I'm gonna move it, but let's go ahead and read it now.
(921) Ratify a successor collective bargaining agreement between the city and the Portland Police Commanding Officers Association relating to the terms and conditions of employment of police lieutenants for 2018 to 2020.
So colleagues, is obvious, we have an absentee today, and I've had a request that we pull this and have it come back on the 5th of September when we have the full council present. So I will be returning item 921 to my office. We will hear it on September 5th. Next item, please, would be item number 917.
917, authorize the Bureau of Transportation to permit construction of sky structures serving assisted living and retirement centers outside of the Central City District.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a straightforward item that came out of the Terwilliger Plazas, a request to consider a sky bridge for their proposed expansion. We know that these facilities can be very beneficial to seniors and disabled adults who are part of an institution with multiple buildings. And Commissioner Fritz deserves the lion's share of credit for moving this forward. Staff is here to quickly walk us through the item and to answer any questions council members may have. And this is a first reading, and we'll move to a second reading next week. I'll turn it over to Kurt Kruger.
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners. Kurt Kruger with PBOT. Just a short walk down memory lane with us. In 1982, the city adopted a encroachments in the public right-of-way document. It's needing an update, and so we're making a small revision to that today. I think this was done under the Mayor Ivancy terms. Around the time when Pioneer Square was being built, there were sky bridges that were being proposed in the downtown core, and there was a strong urge to keep people and pedestrians at the street level and activate our streets and keep people at that ground floor level. We've had 3 or 4 sky bridges that have come before this council in the past couple councils in the last 10 or 15 years. They go through a tremendous amount of scrutiny, and there are certain exceptions that are allowed by you, the council. One of the things that is prohibited at the time right now is sky bridges for assisted living or retirement communities outside the central city. And so this ordinance actually allows and opens up a provision to approve those, to let them come in, go through an application process, go through the city's design review process, and ultimately come before you for approval. But it removes the prohibition on that today.
Commissioner Fritz.
And Commissioner Saltzman mentioned Terwilliger Plaza. Is Terwilliger Plaza outside of the central city?
It is.
Thank you.
Very good. Public testimony on this item?
We have one testifier, Charles Bridge Crane Johnson.
Very good. Thank you. Come on up.
Good morning, Commissioners. For the record, Charles Bridge Crane Johnson. And it was interesting to know that Terwilliger Plaza is outside of downtown area, and the idea of a sky bridge. Under Mayor Hales, we also had some discussion about whether sky bridges are an adequate tool to reach our Vision Zero goals, especially for elderly people. And I think that it's appropriate for you to take this step as long as we as citizens know that the various bureaus will be involved in people being able to voice their opinions and concerns about a sky bridge showing up down on Terwilliger. The plaza itself is already quite an obstruction for the natural view there, but I'm sure we'll hear a variety of opinions from citizens. The other thing is, as we look at other parts of the city where there's assisted living, I hope that they'll also be facilitated. And as we face an aging population and people that have just found that they cannot age in place, recently the Oddfellows home on Holgate went before the county, which serves actually as the hospital board, to get some special financing to, so far, no sky bridge. They're probably going to need a bigger campus soon. And it would be an interesting possibility to increase safety for elderly people to access the park across from the Oddfellows Senior Living there on Holgate. But I think that we've, as a city, we've already overly concerned ourselves with preventing sky bridges. Admittedly, we're not Minneapolis. We don't have the same snow concerns. The way the climate's going, maybe we'll never see snow again in Portland. But commercial activity can happen on second floors along with massive sky bridge structures like we have just 1 block away at the former First Interstate, now Wells Fargo building. So I think you should approve this, opening this doorway. It's always unfortunate when a doorway is open for just one project like Terwilliger Plaza, but maybe we'll see some increased safety for our elderly citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to be looking at Mr. Kruger for a nod or a shake. My understanding, I don't believe that Terwilliger Plaza wants to put a sky bridge over Terwilliger, or that they don't have buildings that are separated by Terwilliger. Just want to make that clear before we get screaming headlines. Council approves putting sky bridges over Terwilliger. That will not be happening. Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman, for bringing this forward. This is absolutely a thrill for me. It's been on my bucket list for over 10 years to get this done, not because of Terwilliger Plaza, who's just recently come forward, but because of Russellville Park in East Portland, 103rd and Burnside, where there are 2 buildings, the apartments and the common areas where they have the dining hall are separated by the right-of-way of 103rd. It's a one-way street. It's just got these two structures on the other side of it, and it's not the snow, Mr. Johnson, it's the rain, that the seniors with their walkers and wheelchairs are going out in the rain to get from their bedroom to their dinner, which had always seemed to me to be really not what we want to have happen. And yes, Mayor Hales, as well as Commissioner Hales, was very concerned about losing the activity at the street level. There'll still be a process for applications to go through. They will still be required to pay for the privilege of using the city's right-of-way, just like every other Skybridge does, but this opens up a huge opportunity. I do need to declare a potential conflict of interest in that my parents-in-law live at Cherrywood Village in East Portland. I believe their Skybridges are all done in the past anyway, and I don't know that there are any buildings that need to connect there. But potentially from their main building to the Alzheimer's facility is a potential there. So I think the more we can make it easy for people to receive care in a dignified way, the better. So thank you very much to staff for doing this, and thanks again, Commissioner Saltzman.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Next item, 918, please.
918, authorize an intergovernmental agreement with Oregon State Police to provide Portland Police Bureau access to Oregon State Police's automated biometric identification system not to exceed $102,480.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jeff Morris. I'm a sergeant with the Police Bureau. I'm assigned to the Forensic Evidence Division. Here today representing Captain Kruger, who has a previous engagement. As stated, we are here to discuss and answer questions regarding a renewal of an intergovernmental agreement with the Oregon State Police regarding fingerprint services. This is a long-term agreement dating back approximately 30 years. The Forensic Evidence Division would also like to assure City Council that this system will only be used to search and identify fingerprints and palm prints. I'd like to introduce Chris Warmdahl. He also works for the Forensic Evidence Division as our technology coordinator, and he's really the subject matter expert on this system and the agreement.
Very good. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Chris Wormdahl, the program manager for the technology programs utilized by the Bureau's Forensic Evidence Division. I have a very brief statement, and then I can answer any questions you might have. The intergovernmental agreement is a continuation of an agreement that has been in effect for almost 30 years between PPB and Oregon State Police to access the Western Identification Network's automated biometric identification system, WIN-ABIS for short. The system is utilized by the Police Bureau's Forensic Evidence Division's identification technicians to assist in the search of fingerprints and verify the identity of more than 35,000 arrested subjects each year. It is also used by the division's criminalists to search and identify latent fingerprints and palm prints found at crime scenes such as burglaries, assaults, rapes, and homicides. WIN is a regional system that consists of the following 8 Western states: Oregon, Washington, Idaho, Wyoming, Montana, Alaska, Nevada, and Utah. Through our connection to OSB and WIN, we are also allowed to connect to the FBI's Next Generation Identification System, or NGI. This allows our criminalists to search latent prints nationally when they are not found locally. WIN was created in the late 80s to make the process of fingerprint searching and identification faster and more efficient. Though the system's architecture and technology has changed over the years, the usefulness has not. ABIS allows us to identify arrested subjects in less than 2 hours as compared to the weeks and months it used to take. Latent print searches were practically impossible before the development of ABIS. Without this agreement, we will not be able to identify wanted subjects that give false names or help investigators solve crimes. Thank you.
Is this a contract that's been in place? Obviously, it's been in place. How long has this contract been in place?
How long has it been in place?
Yes. Is this a 5-year contract?
Yeah, it's a 5-year contract, renewed every 5 years.
And so we
reviewed.
would be renewing it for a 5-year period, is
Yes.
that correct?
Yeah.
Very good. And what would be, you went to special pains to say this is only for fingerprints and palm prints. If it were ever expanded beyond that, what steps would be required and what would be the city council's engagement in that process?
It's actually spelled out in the contract under Section 2, which is the scope of agreement. And it's basically 2 parts. It says this is for specifically fingerprint and palm print searching and data. The system has the capability for future expansion to include iris and facial recognition. It is not part of it at this point. The second part of Section 2 specifies that any additional, any future types of biometric data, such as facial recognition or retinal, would require an update to the agreement, which the City Council would then have opinion and a vote on.
Very good.
Yeah.
And obviously, this is now becoming widespread in Europe, but I want to make sure that we have a public conversation before we go to that direction.
Absolutely.
If we go to that direction. Right. Commissioner Fritz.
I just want to amplify what the mayor just said. So the user cannot, there can be no change to this without the City Council's formal vote. Is that correct?
It would require an amendment to the agreement. Correct.
Thank you.
I'm not sure I know what a latent print is.
Latent print is a partial print left at a crime scene. So may just be a smudge, maybe a little bit of ridge detail. The crime scene person will go, look over the crime scene, ask a victim if there were any specific things that they noticed that were moved, say it's a burglary, and then look at that area, dust for prints, and if there is something of value that they see or they think may be of value, they will collect it, bring it back to the office, review it, and then search it into the system.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Further questions? Public testimony, please, Sue.
We have 3 people who've signed up.
Very good.
Dan Handelman, Mimi Gurman, Charles Rich Crane Johnson.
Thank you.
Thank
Please
you.
come up.
Good morning, sir.
Morning. Morning, Mayor and Commissioners. I'm Dan Handelman with Portland Cop Watch, and I'm very glad you had the discussion that kind of covered my intended testimony, which is that I want to make sure that there's no expansion of this without City Council having a say in it. The state law that was passed around the use of body cameras for police specifically prohibits it being used for facial recognition, and I want to make sure that we do not have that going on through some other backdoor means. There are a lot of concerns about the invasion of people's privacy and the increasing technology that's being used around so-called biometrics, and I think that we, I would say that we are already having this conversation rather than waiting until those things open up, that our group would be very concerned about expanding what the database is going to be used for. One of the things that we noticed in this agenda item, and actually we testified on this the last time it came up too, is that Captain Kruger is now, he's moved from drugs and vice to be in the forensic services division, and there are a lot of people in the community who have concerns about Captain Kruger and his past and some of the behaviors that he's exhibited in the last few years. So I just wanted to bring that forward as another concern, particularly around the use of identifying people based on perhaps their DNA, their race, or other biometric factors.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, so nice to be here again. So I was listening to the agenda, this agenda item, and I didn't know that it was going to be happening today, and I just took notes. FBI, and I thought, wow, we're doing things that are joined with the FBI. Wow. Anyway, then I thought racial profiling. This is right for racial profiling. Why wouldn't it be? Why wouldn't a cop who's already racial profiling, to the extent that our cops do in this city, use this new program for racial profiling, but to get, fingerprints and everything else? Racism is on my notes. Immigrant status is on my notes. Kruger is a Nazi is on my notes. There's no reason for this to cost anything as well. I can't figure that out. It's a computer. If one if somebody's got a computer program, all they have to do is allow in the city. So I'm not really sure what the $102,000 would go for, and I think that we have a right to know dollar for dollar what the $102,000 would be used for. That this is Orwellian. Again, these are just my notes in listening. This is absolutely Orwellian. That this is going to lead to retina scans. The thing that did stop me is that, Mayor, you were saying that we need to have a public conversation. Not later, though. We need to have that conversation now before this agenda item is even voted on. This should be opened up to the entire city because it affects every single community in our city that is not wealthy and white. And I really insist that until there is an open city conversation on this with all of us invited, that this can't even be voted on today.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. Should I say, Guten Morgen, Frauen Ehren. It's always interesting when anything comes before the council and has the fingerprints of Herr Captain Kruger on it. I'm glad that Mr. Handelman from Copwatch brought that to your attention as well. And the move of Chief Outlaw moving people from Vice to forensics. One actually kind of academic, kind of fiduciary point was really clearly raised by Ms. Gurman. Aren't our taxes already paying for this frickin' crap? How is it that a certain percentage of the federal budget goes in to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, which runs a FIS, Automated Fingerprint Identification System, should be fully funded by the federal government because God knows us, they're not giving enough money to house homeless people. So why is it that we need a regional network, WIN, to gouge us for $20,000 a year to get fingerprint records that should already be fully funded by the Congress, the Department of Justice, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation? The fact that they go around and create, or other agencies, interstate agencies, have said, here's an opportunity for us to get $20,000 a year from Portland on a 5-year contract so that we can do something a little different with biometrics, but only fingerprints, according to the 14-page contract PDF. So I really think that as police commissioner and as a bean counter Police Commissioner Wheeler, it's very reasonable for you to look into why aren't Wyden and Merkley and Blumenauer delivering a Department of Justice and a Federal Bureau of Investigation that doesn't need for each municipality to cough up a little bit of extra money to get ABIS Plus or whatever this is that we're buying. It just doesn't make sense, especially from a federal government that says, oh, Portland, you have 10,000 homeless people? Tough noogies, no more money. Or for a crazy federal, there's dozens of federal police cars that park over at the bankruptcy court. Those cars could answer 911 calls from ICE workers, I suppose, if they wanted to. So there's no need to grow our law enforcement budgets under illusions of public safety. What's unsafe is having people sleeping outside overnight during air quality emergencies, ending up in emergency rooms and stuff like that. That is really where this $100,000 needs to go to. So I hope this contract never comes before the city again, because we're all going to be diligent, engaged citizens and ask Washington, D.C. why this isn't taken care of with all the money they collect for federal taxes. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleagues, any further questions? Sue, please call the roll.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaley.
Aye.
Fritz.
Well, thanks, Mr. Johnson, for pointing out this is actually 20,000-ish a year for 5 years, and it goes for equipment installation, training, management support, and similar services. So it seems reasonable to pay into a system for those reasons. As we all know, over 5 years, computers often need servicing and additional maintenance and upgrades, and it seems very reasonable. Aye.
Wheeler.
I agree with those who share concerns about the technology. This is a technology It can be used for great good. It is used for great good to identify perpetrators of violent crimes. But in the wrong hands, this kind of technology could obviously be used for negative purposes with negative consequences. And that's why I asked the question I did about the extension of any biometrics. And I'm gratified that it has to come back to the City Council if there is any expansion of this contract. And I know that should that request come forward, it would be a very thorough conversation and one that would probably generate a lot of public input. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 919.
919, amend an intergovernmental agreement with Portland State University in an amount not to exceed $50,000 under the fiscal year 2014 Smart Policing Initiative Grant Program to provide research and services to the Police Bureau for the study of the Neighborhood Involvement Locations Program.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Christian Peterson. I'm a crime analyst.
Oh, Christian, I'm sorry. I had a statement I was supposed to read as an intro to you, and I blew it off. I apologize. As a rapidly changing city, it's critical that we invest in our communities with an eye towards modernity and sustainability. With an increasing awareness that law enforcement practices disproportionately affect communities of color and vulnerable populations, the onus is on city government to support a law enforcement model that supports the communities it serves. During my time as mayor, this council has seen a number of police items on the agenda, several that have obviously been controversial. I have to say I'm quite excited by this potential partnership with PSU. This IGA speaks to my priorities as mayor around 21st century policing. We talk a lot about supporting 21st century policing principles without actually talking about what that means to the city of Portland. The core of 21st century policing rests on 6 key pillars. Number 1, building trust and legitimacy, something we hear a lot about in this chamber. Number 2, policy and oversight. Number 3, technology and social media. And people had just raised some issues around that issue. Number 4, community policing and crime reduction. Number 5, training and education. And number 6, officer wellness and safety. The work behind this IGA uses technology to improve community engagement strategies and enhance PPB service delivery so that officers aren't just being responsive to those who think to report a crime, but also to those who are afraid of reporting a crime. We believe in policing with transparency. We believe in policing with compassion and respect. We believe in policing with accountability. We believe in strengthening the relationship between the Portland Police Bureau members and the people who are served so that interactions with law enforcement begin from a place of trust rather than from a place of fear. To serve and protect means to serve and protect all Portlanders. I applaud the Portland Police Bureau and Chief Outlaw for undertaking this endeavor, and many thanks to our partners at Portland State University for partnering with the city on this important work. Thank you.
Thank you, and again, good morning, Mayor and Commissioners. My name is Christian Peterson. I'm a crime analyst for the Portland Police Bureau, and I'm thanking you for the opportunity to briefly discuss the technical amendment and answer any questions you may have. Back in November of 2014, the city approved an ordinance that accepted a $699,000 Smart Policing Initiative grant from the Bureau of Justice Assistance. And in order to fulfill the grant, on May 20th, 2015, the Portland Police Bureau entered into an intergovernmental agreement with Portland State University. Part of the scope of work for the grant, Portland State University and the Portland Police Bureau identified an opportunity to enhance the understanding and integration of community survey data into police interventions. Together, we have continued the grant work by developing a community survey toolkit, which continues to be funded by the Bureau of Justice Assistance. This toolkit will provide instructions and guidance to any organization, though targeted specifically towards police personnel, for developing a community survey that follows scanning, analysis, response, and assessment, the SARA model, a problem-oriented policing strategy. This toolkit fulfills the final deliverable of the scope of work for the grant, The target date for delivering this toolkit to the BJA and to the Police Bureau is the end of September. The technical amendment before you today is for the compensation to Portland State University for the work completed to date on the development of the toolkit and for the completion of their work until the final delivery of the toolkit at the end of September. Fulfilling the scope of work requirements for the grant means that agencies across the nation, not only just here, have an opportunity to understand and develop community problem-oriented surveys that can be used to integrate community feedback into interventions, thus embracing the tenets of 21st century policing. Thank you. Any questions?
Commissioner.
So is this an
Fritz.
expected additional amount?
This is not an additional amount. This is monies that had been saved from other parts of it and is just reallocating to expand the product work.
Thank you.
Public testimony.
We have 3 speakers: Dan Handelman, Mimi Gurman, Charles Bridgecrane Johnson.
Come on up.
Good morning again, Mayor and City Commissioners. I'm still Dan Handelman with Portland Cop Watch. This is an extension of a contract that we testified about in 2014. And then in 2015, the compliance officer and community liaison who's working on the DOJ agreement referred to the NILOC program in the quarterly report about the progress of the implementation of the settlement agreement. And what we wrote about that is that the program anecdotally has caused confusion and fear in Portlanders. What are these cops doing in my neighborhood and talking to young people of color? It may indeed be encouraging bias-based policing activities such as stops and pat-downs. Until there's evidence that NILOCs are not being used for intelligence gathering, consent searches, and disproportionate contacts with young people of color, we're not sure how the COCL can be blanket praising this program, we wrote. So it seems that if you read the agenda item carefully, that the PSU survey discovered the same problem, that they found that people were mistrustful of the police and didn't know what they were doing in their neighborhood. And we told you that without you having to spend $750,000 on it. So, I don't hear anything about the question of bias being a consideration in this study. And I'm very concerned about the over-policing of our communities, low-income communities and communities of color that are going to be a result of this, because we had this discussion around another topic recently where those crimes that happen in a public area get more attention than those that happen in private boardrooms and in condos. So while I don't think it's a bad idea to discover ways for the police to listen to the community, which it sounds like part of what this contract's about, those safeguards have to be put in order for us to have any kind of support for what's going on. And I also should add that we're also still waiting for those unarmed community officers to be put out on patrol, which I think would be perhaps a better way to deal with it than sending armed officers into quote unquote problem areas. If you have these officers who are not intimidating and not necessarily even the same bulked up uniforms, that might be very helpful. And in my last couple of seconds, I just want to say I'm sorry I didn't get to testify about the Human Rights Commission earlier because it was a report and the mayor's still not allowing public contemporaneous testimony on reports. We did send in comments about that, and I hope you all got a chance to read that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I have directed that the community officer program be up and running by January 1st. We ran into some labor negotiation issues. Those are coming to a conclusion, and I, like you, look forward to that program being up and running. Good morning.
Good morning. My name's Mimi Gurman. I'd like to bring the name Jason Washington to the table. At PSU recently, armed security killed a man at PSU. I think that it requires BALLS of the cops to come here to ask for more money with an agreement with PSU for anything regarding arms, weaponry, and to pretend that they are listening to community. It's complete BS. And I'm offended. I'm offended for everybody who has to look at these armed security guards and cops near them while they're trying to study to better their lives, knowing that these security guards and cops will kill anyone who is of color in a split second, as we saw in the reports that came out from testimony with people on the ground who watched Jason Washington get murdered. I'm not like Dan, who has all this information, which is so wonderful to bring to you. I'm just a concerned resident, and I come here to plead for your humanity. That's it. Every time I come up here, to ask you to ask the right questions, questions that aren't asked, never a question. Every time regarding police wanting money for weapons, wanting something for technology to put away immigrants, to work with ICE, to work with the FBI, and so on. Like, I actually believe that there are hearts in your bodies that we can tap. So far, I'm on the losing end of that. But more than me, the communities that are more at risk than myself are on the losing end of that. We can't give PSU, the cops, this agreement, anybody asking for more money until they can show us that they know what to do with the weapons they already have, and they know what to do with the word transparency and the word communication and wanting to communicate with community. They don't know how to do any of those things. So we can't gratify their wishes for more of the same that get Black people killed and immigrants put away because the city council continues to give them money and the rights to do just that. Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, Charles Bridge Crane Johnson, and of course I want to echo deepest sympathies and peace to the family of Jason Washington, Navy veteran, killed on the streets of our city by Portland State University Public Safety. So definitely we need to invest $50,000 and more in doing better. Today seems to be my day to preach about fiduciary duties. We just have this item describing a grant over $600,000. When y'all get $600,000, I want to see the frickin' Gantt chart. You can be dang sure if we got a grant for almost $750,000, somebody somewhere was paid to make a Gantt chart with a timeline about goals, objectives, outcomes. It's not in the presentation. It should be. Admittedly, we're talking right now about less than 10% of that budget. We're just tweaking $50,000. But tonight, I think at Tabor Space, there's going to be a discussion about PSEP. Bring what the people are paying for. It's very hard for even those of us who are very engaged. I'll have to discuss a little bit more with Mr. Handelman afterwards, but it's like $700,000 of federal money that came to us to make policing more sensitive, more responsible, less lethal, especially for communities of color or for the Ella Fritz family. There should be a package that describes the scope of this work, what has been put forth, and analyzes the failures. We know that Portland police have had situations that have resulted in deaths and in grenades impacting into the back of people's heads through helmets. So we probably need a lot more than just $700,000 or $669,000 from the feds to get right. But we're not going to really get right until items like this come with a very clear, transparent plan, a binder that shows the timeline, that shows what the deliverables are going to be from the people that are actually cashing the checks and putting that money in their pockets and feeding their families with this fortunate chunk of federal money. So while it's not bad for you to vote yes right now and tweak the $50,000, you should all make a little note saying, oh, what am I getting for my $50,000? How is it going to help keep my friends and neighbors alive? How is it going to reduce racism inside the Portland Police Department? So please take note of that. Think about it. We'll discuss it more in the future.
Very good. Thank you, all three of you.
And one more, Lightning.
Good morning.
Morning. Yes, my name is Lightning. I represent Lightning Super Creativity Data Attack Dog. One of the concerns I have on this, and when we're talking smart policing, I really don't think PSU has the intelligence to even do this report. And in fact, in my opinion, it's almost like they have a monopoly on all these type of studies and reports. And let's look at just recently the death over there. They shouldn't even be doing these reports. I don't think they're intelligent. I don't think they have the ability. I think PSU is basically just subpar. And for them to do this report, we need to have some other people brought in to do these reports. Because quite frankly, I'm really tired of hearing the term PSU and getting all these type of reports as though they're the experts. They're incompetent. They're not the experts. And that's the statement from Lightning. Now, issue number 2, to the police commissioner, protect and serve all the people in the city, people that pay taxes, people that need the assistance of the police. That's my job as police commissioner, as mayor, to make sure that happens. Even if I'm somebody that works at the ICE office and I'm an employee coming out and I have concerns, are you going to protect me, Mayor Wheeler? Are you going to offer me that service? Or do you have some type of conflict of interest, some bias that might make you say, you know what? I could care less if you get hurt and I hope you leave my city. Now that would be interesting, isn't it, Mayor? That would be a very interesting situation. And I wonder if you have any lawsuits directed toward you right now asking for back compensation and the concern over this. Because if you do, I would almost ask you to step down immediately. I would ask you to leave this city. Because when you ever decide selectively to enforce the police department, which is of the city of the people, not just you, police commissioner. And by the way, I agree with Daryl Turner to analyze whether you should be police commissioner or not. And I think that's what this study should be about, on why the conflict of interest that you think you can be police commissioner and overlook the police department at the same time and make certain decisions as the mayor in voting on these type of grants isn't even considered a conflict of interest, because in my opinion it is. The police commissioner should be completely separated from the mayor, and I hope,
Thank you,
Mayor, that you make it right on what you did to the federal employees.
Thank you. And I will speak briefly to
Thank
that,
you, sir.
since you raised the question and you used the Trump administration's talking points. Please call the roll.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaley.
Well, I want to thank Dan Handelman for coming and giving comments on this item and the one previously. I generally agree with his concerns and appreciate the comments on this. I don't think it's fair to conflate the PSU administration with the academic side of the university that actually does the research. I personally support disarming PSU campus police, but that has no bearing on this item, on which I vote aye.
Fritz.
Thanks to staff who brought this forward and for clarifying that this is moving money that was previously allocated. Thanks to Janine Gates on my staff who looked into the equity impacts for me. She notes that this is doing what we want our police to do, which is to seek feedback from the community about how they can improve. And in particular that neighborhoods, including Park Rose, King, Humboldt, and the Hawthorne Business Association District were contacted, but particularly I appreciate that multiple black churches in North and Northeast Portland were visited, and that means reaching out to people where they are and getting feedback from some of the people most impacted by police activity and the communities that they serve. So I appreciate that this process is moving forward. Aye.
Wheeler.
So I appreciate this process as well, and I want to remind everyone, because sometimes the testimony gets a little far afield and into the land of the fanciful. The money from this grant, which is already accounted for, is going to the Hatfield School of Government. It is not going to the Police Bureau. And the stated purpose of this study is one that I strongly support, which is how do we continue to work together given all of the changes that are taking place in the community, given the changes that are expected around policing, particularly around accountability, and how do we best interact with the community that we serve in order to strengthen the trust between the Police Bureau and the community that the Police Bureau serves. I think that is a very noble cause, and I think it is a very important cause because it will help us be better in the delivery of services to the people who not only live here, but the people who pay the bills. So I'm strongly supportive of it. Number two, I just want to state again, and I'm sorry that I have to keep stating this, I have spoken often and publicly about the dual role that the mayor of Portland serves, both as the mayor of the city, the presiding officer of the council, and the police commissioner. It is a very unique role. And there are times when it looks like those roles come into conflict. There are times when it looks like those roles are inconsistent with each other. And I will tell you what I've said many times, including during my last State of the City address. I've not been particularly shy about this. I've not been coy about it. We should look at this. And we should ask ourselves, as our city grows and as our city becomes more complex and as our city becomes more diverse, is the form of government we currently have in this city serving the best interests of our residents? It is absolutely a fair question to ask. Now, with regard to ICE, it galls me when I keep hearing the administration's truncated talking points, misleading talking points, reiterated here and elsewhere around the nation and even around the world. To be clear, I do not support the ICE policy of separating children from their families. I have said it repeatedly. It is unconscionable for an administrative action to lead to the separation of children from their parents. Who here can tell me that that will not have lifelong consequences for those children? That kind of trauma. Excuse me, you spoke, now I get to respond. Excuse me, now I get to respond. You had your 3 minutes, now I get mine. That's the way it works around here. Excuse me. So the question was, did we leave ICE officers calling for help on 911 unaided? The answer is every call that came into 911, as is required by law, got a response. And the chief police has been very clear on that. The police chief has actually released the data on that. I have no reason to believe that there won't be follow-up investigation or litigation, and let the chips fall where they may. But I have no regrets about the way that we handled that situation. I have no regrets about the way the Police Bureau was directed by the police chief during that time. And if I am asked 5 years or 10 years or 50 years from now how I feel about the policies of ICE, I am not going to change my opinion one iota. It will remain the same. But as police commissioner, I understand everybody in this city is entitled to the protection and the security of the Portland Police Bureau. And part of what this study is trying to do is to help us be better in achieving that important goal. So with that, I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Next item, 920.
920, approve findings to authorize an exemption to the competitive bidding requirements and authorize the use of an alternative contracting method of construction manager, general contractor, and authorize a contract for the Sullivan's Crossing Bicycle and Pedestrian Bridge project for an estimated $11 million.
Commissioner Saltzman.
I will turn this over to our staff here for presentation.
Great. Thanks, Commissioner Saltzman, Mayor Wheeler, members of council. I'm Dan Layden, project manager from the Bureau of Transportation. I'm joined by Lester Spedler, the chief procurement officer. We're here to discuss our request to exempt the Sullivan's Crossing Bicycle and Pedestrian Bridge from competitive bidding in order to move forward with the solicitation for a construction manager general contractor. I'll give a brief presentation on the bridge and the project itself, and then Les will talk about the findings that we've identified. You can see on the drawing a rendering of what the bridge will look like. It is a bridge that will connect Northeast 7th Avenue across I-84 and Sullivan's Crossing from Lloyd Boulevard to the Central East Side. It's a 24-foot wide bicycle and pedestrian bridge. It's been designed by KPFF Engineering, a local Portland firm that we came to you about a year ago with a contract for. It's been widely praised for its design, both by the Design Commission and by 2 public open houses that we had on the project. The schedule for the project, we are currently at 60% design. If you approve our desire to go ahead with the CMGC contract, we would expect that contract to be in place by January of 2019, with construction from May of 2019 through December of 2020. The project budget, wait a minute, a second here. The project budget is $13.5 million, with $11 million of transportation system development charge funds and contributions from Prosper Portland, Go Lloyd, and the Central East Side Industrial District. The project has a series of complex project elements that will require, we feel would be beneficial to have a construction management general contractor. Probably the easiest way to describe the complex project elements is that the construction will be over both Interstate 84, the Union Pacific Railway, and the Sullivan's Gulch. It requires the installation of 2 300-foot-long steel arches over the railway and interstate freeway. In order for that to happen, the freeway needs to be closed. That is obviously a very challenging thing to do. We have worked with the Oregon Department of Transportation to discuss a weekend closure, but the work needs to occur very quickly during that time frame. In addition, we are also installing some drilled shafts in very close proximity to an aging large diameter sewer line. For those reasons, we feel it's important to be able to have a contractor who can work with us and work with our team during the final design phase to modify the design, to improve the constructability, and plan a very complicated construction phasing process. In addition, the other major benefit of CMGC is that the steel could potentially be purchased earlier and then with design build project, which would reduce the price uncertainty in a very volatile market. I'm now going to turn over to Les to discuss the findings that we've come up with.
Could I ask a question before
Sure.
you jump off? You mentioned the question of steel, and that's been on my mind, along with everything else, apparently.
There's a lot to be on people's
So
mind
we
these days.
have all these tariffs that are impacting the price of steel, plus there's a lot of competition for the existing supply, given
Correct.
that nationally,
Correct.
in fact, globally, there's an expansion boom.
Mhm.
Are you looking at some data that gives you confident that the price of steel is actually going to continue to go up, or are you expecting it to plateau, or what? You mentioned part of the theory behind CMGC is we can lock in today's steel prices.
Right.
Is that a good thing? I really just don't know.
It is, that's the $64,000 question. I don't think anybody can really answer that with a great deal of certainty. What we have seen over the past few years, even before the tariffs took place, is that steel prices have been rising at a pretty steady rate. One of the advantages of this project is that because it is not a federally funded project, we have a little more availability in the market. We do not have to use steel that is completely produced in the United States. However, the tariffs have changed that dynamic somewhat because they are bringing those prices more competitive with U.S. steel. It's really hard to say. I think our general estimation that I've heard from the construction industry is the sooner the better, but that could very well change.
Okay, thank you.
I'm just going to review the findings. So you're familiar with the process to exempt a construction project from the competitive low bid procurement process. So an RFP for a CMGC is not expected to discourage competition. The RFP would be a competitive solicitation where we would ask proposers to submit proposals in response to information that we request in the RFP. That usually includes experience, qualifications, project approach, and certain cost considerations for the project. And we actually expect, because of the complexities and the potential risk that a construction contractor would have in the traditional design, bid, build, delivery method, that we think that we'll get more competition by doing a qualifications-based best value solicitation. So cost savings. It is expected that cost savings will be achieved by bringing the contractor on the project team before the design is finalized. This allows the construction contractor to advise on constructability issues, which greatly reduces the number and scale of change orders and also helps to make the project construction more efficient. There will be specialized expertise in construction methods that are required. A project of this scale with as many possible complications as this one requires that the contractors be experienced and knowledgeable to ensure the project is successful. It is also critical to have cooperation between the city, our designer, and the contractor before the design is finalized. This will likely result in a faster total delivery. So a traditional design bid build delivery method is a linear process whereby we engage a designer to fully design the project, bid it out to the construction community, and then build it. For a CMGC method, the city will be bringing the construction contractor on board prior to finalization of the design to receive their input. This method not only shortens the overall project schedule, but reduces the potential for change orders. It encourages cooperative selection of alternative products, and it promotes good communication between the city, the designer, and the contractor. Also, as noted on Dan's previous slide, by bringing the contractor on early and allowing them to start sourcing this steel, that could be an advantage to the city. Better cost control. A CMGC delivery method provides the city with better cost control by involving the contractor in the finalization of design. This allows the construction contractor to advise on constructability issues. It also affords them the opportunity to propose recommendations to the city for consideration and value engineering and different means and methods to accomplish the project. Lastly, we feel like a CMGC method would benefit the public here. The taxpayers of the city of Portland benefit from this delivery method for all the reasons previously stated. CMGC delivery method for this project will benefit the taxpayers by ensuring that the bridge is optimally designed for constructability, usability, ongoing repair and maintenance in the most cost-effective and efficient manner. So in addition to satisfying the statutory requirements for an exemption to the low bid process, the CMGC method allows better disadvantaged, minority-owned, women-owned, emerging small business enterprise participation and allows the contractor to work more closely with the city to develop, construct, and commission the bridge with more hands-on participation. The CMGC method also allows PBOT to have contract terms and conditions that stipulate DMWSB participation and provide penalties if those goals are not met. Because of the estimated amount of the project, the contract will use a community equity and inclusion plan during construction. Using that plan for this project was mandated by council last year when council established the overall community opportunities and enhancements program. And lastly, Dan Layden, myself, PBOT and Procurement Services asked that the council accept the findings and authorize exempting this project from the low bid competitive solicitation requirement and authorize the use of the CMG construction delivery method and RFP. Dan and I are happy to answer any questions.
There you have it. Can I ask you a question? Go back at the beginning of the presentation, you
Sure.
showed a graphic of the actual crossing. Is that as designed or just a for example, or what are we looking at?
That is an artist's rendering of where the design is currently at. That is, we had a series of different options that we reviewed with the public at an open house in December and online. And this was the option that was chosen. The because of the constraints of the site, there are not a lot of choices in how the bridge can be designed. I'm not a bridge engineer, so I can't go into great detail, but essentially, the circumstance we have is on the south side of Sullivan's Gulch, we don't have any room because ODOT owns the bank and the freeway, of course. On the north side by Lord Boulevard, there's actually a fair amount of right-of-way, which is why you see that larger foundation on the north side, because we have more access to that side. ODOT has asked us to keep the south bank of the freeway clear for the potential for a future expansion of the freeway. So the bridge design is sort of driven by that factor. The idea of the arch is really intended to be a very elegant sort of high-profile, I guess, landmark design. And it's been very well received by the public and by the Design Commission.
Very good, thank you, I appreciate that. Commissioner Fritz.
Thank you for bringing that back up, Mayor. What are the sides made out of?
The sides?
Like the fence at the side?
So the fence will be, unfortunately, there are some requirements that we need to meet in order to meet the requirements of both the railway and the freeway. It's a wire mesh material that will provide visibility through the material, but will also prohibit or prevent people from throwing items onto the bridge, and will also deter the ability of people to be able to climb the bridge.
That was my question.
Yeah.
It's
We're still working on the details of that, but that's definitely a major concern.
Yeah, I think there's a challenge between making it so that people can't climb it versus making it graffiti-proof. So I'm
Right.
you're considering
And
both
making
of
it
those.
transparent, and yeah. That's
Yeah.
definitely been in our thoughts.
Okay, so I'll say the same thing I said the other day when you were talking about another CMGC exemption. I've been doing a lot of reading on this subject because I'm not a procurement expert on large capital construction projects, and CMGC seems to be very much in favor right now on large capital construction projects. But what is less clear as you read the literature out there on this subject is whether or not it actually saves you money. What it all does is it hedges, and it says it has the potential to save money, provided that you're highly engaged, highly accountable, and you really push hard at the beginning of the process with your construction partners to make sure that the estimates that are being provided are actually realistic estimates as opposed to cushioned estimates.
Right.
And so what I'm hoping we do, given that we now have several CMGC projects lined up, I would like us to keep our own data pool. I would like us to evaluate internally. I'm happy to make the exception here. It makes sense conceptually, but I'd actually like to know, are we really saving any money over with CMGC over the conventional procurement methodology? And I'd also like more information nationally, what we are learning about CMGC, given that there are more and more projects that are being procured under this methodology. I mean, it's almost as though CMGC is becoming the norm as opposed to the exception. And so I just personally, as one member of the council where we have to make this decision to allow the exemption, I'd like a little more data and a little more fact in terms of whether this is really the right thing for us to be doing or not.
We can certainly compile
Great.
that over time.
Thank you.
Sure.
Anything else? Public testimony, Sue?
We've had two people sign up.
Very good.
Please come up, Jean Connett and Charles Johnson.
You want to go first?
Please. I'm taking it up.
Sure.
You go. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you for being here.
All right, first, I go first. Let's talk about Charles Bridge Crane Johnson, for the record, no relation to this particular bridge. And there's tower, it's actually more of a tower crane conversation. Who can believe that we have a tower crane, I think, in Sullivan's Gulch near Northeast 20th, just across I-84. And in addition to the mayor's important suggestion that we become better at data analysis about these CMGC exemptions, and I just want to remind us that construction manager, general contractor exemption or change from the regular purchasing process. I hope that the mayor will go even further and kind of create a working group or task force to maybe work with the chief purchasing officer, kind of report back on the effectiveness of this. Is it really improving our ability to engage small business, women and minority contractors, or is it just something that gives a little bit of a paperwork advantage to some GCs or whatever? So I want to talk about the larger scope of the project in the equity lens and gentrification, because it somewhat makes sense that an expensive, possibly $11 million bridge would not be created in an area that's just treading water or stagnating. But when we look at overall expenditures in community development in Portland, we want to make sure really that we're not letting the developer tail wag the dog. There's one project, I think, going in this vicinity where that tower crane is. Those people paying perhaps above market rents are getting the advantage of this $11 million amenity. So when we look at the overall PBOT budget, we want to make sure that there's a inclusion. Some great things have happened. The Gateway Discovery Park around 105th. And so I think we're doing a good job, but as has been emphasized, we should look at metrics so that when somebody says, oh, the Lloyd Mall is failing and you tried to save it with an $11 million pedestrian bridge, we can also say, that's not exactly why, but even if you think that's why, look at the great things we've done at Gateway Greenway and other more remote locations that aren't inside inside Cesar Chavez Boulevard. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Jan Canet, and my concern here is where the money goes. As far as I'm concerned, why don't you take that money, tell all the homeless people, here's this spot, and here's all the wood and all the material you need to make a little tiny house. Because I don't like the reputation. The hardest part for me was when some rock star said, if you want to go to a living sewer, go to Portland, Oregon. Now, I'm from St. John's. We had our own police force, and so, we didn't have to bother with Portland police and stuff like that. And I miss it terribly. But I think that the policing and getting to know neighborhoods is a really, really good idea instead of just gobbling them up as they did to St. John's. So my concern is where the city money goes. And we're nationally known for our homelessness. I mean, it's all over the place about how bad Portland is. Okay, well, you took my hometown, so I'm supposed to say I'm from Portland. But if you want me to say I'm from Portland, you guys are going to have to really step it up and pay attention to what's going on in Portland and deal with that, because that is the most important thing right now going on in this state and city. Okay, that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
And I just want to apologize. When we talk about Sullivan's Gulch, we should recognize it goes all the way out practically to Gateway, and that there are probably hundreds of our houseless neighbors sleeping there. So I think we all need to take a look and see what's in the city joint office of homeless, the city's budget, the joint office of homeless, to make sure that those people are getting the assistance at removing their trash and maintaining the best quality of life you can when there's no homes for you.
Thank you. Very good. Please call the roll.
Salzman.
Well, this is a very exciting project, and I appreciate the mayor's questions about construction management, general contracting process. It does seem to have become the norm in how we procure things these days for large capital projects. And I would remind all of us that it has benefits. I think it does, and I think this is why it has become more favored. It does tend to reduce the level of adversarialness that develops often when you do a low bid construction project. There's often subsequent change orders and litigation that I think is minimized in the construction general contractor process, although I think that bears, that bears further scrutiny. And it does give us more latitude because we are doing a request for proposal as opposed to a low bid document. It does give us more latitude to be more diligent about making sure that minority, women, and emerging small business subcontractors or contractors are involved in the project, and we can be more demanding of our partners in that regard. Having said that, I am very pleased to support this exciting project. Aye.
Udaley.
Well, thank you, Mayor, for raising your concerns about the CMG issue. I will be looking closely at that as well, as I am set to inherit this sizable bureau. Thanks, I guess. No, just kidding. I'm really excited to learn more about transportation and to dig into all of this. I want to acknowledge the frustration expressed by a community member about money being spent on something that seems less essential, certainly, than housing. But I do want to explain that these funds are coming from sources that we cannot allocate to housing. PBOT funds are coming from the Transportation System Development Charge revenue. We can't simply reallocate that to housing. And my apologies, I'm not clear on where which pot of money the Prosper Portland funds are coming from, but it is very likely that those are also strictly delegated. So I hear you. I just wanted to clarify that. I vote aye.
Fritz.
Aye.
Wheeler.
I think this is a great project, and I appreciate everybody who's worked so hard on this, the Transportation Bureau, Commissioner Saltzman, your team. It's a great vision. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. Let's see, 921 we have moved, so that brings us to 922.
922, create a local improvement district to construct street, sidewalk, and stormwater improvements in the southeast 102nd Avenue and Woodstock Boulevard Local Improvement District.
Commissioner Saltzman.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a local improvement district on Southeast 102nd and Woodstock Boulevard that will bring much-needed improvements to the area. Projects such as these allow us to make progress on reducing the backlog of unpaved streets in East Portland and in the Lentz neighborhood. So I want to thank all the community. I want to thank the staff and the community partners who've worked tirelessly to move this project forward, with a special mention to Chuck Lawrence, a local property owner who's been a key proponent of this local improvement district. And I will now turn it over to Andrew Abbey.
Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman. Andrew Abbey, Local Improvement District Administrator. I'm pleased to announce that we did not receive any remonstrances against LID formation, so this is a nice way, Commissioner Saltzman, to finish off the last LID item you're introducing before us. I think you know, Commissioner, the LIDs have been used since the city's founding. One of the first LIDs we did in the city of Portland, if you go out here to Salmon Street and hang a left, had that LID not been approved by council, we'd have a gravel street downtown on Salmon Street. I looked through and saw that you have brought forth 8 local improvement districts to council during your relatively short tenure, effective tenure as Transportation Commissioner, and I did the math, and we've averaged a new LID every 11 weeks with you at the helm of PBOT Commissioner, and just wanted to thank you for your consistent support of LIDs, and we look forward to getting most of those LIDs under construction next year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent. Any public testimony on this item?
No one signed up.
All right, that makes it easier. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you, Andrew. Next item, 923.
923, authorize the Bureau of Environmental Services to acquire certain permanent and temporary property rights necessary for construction of the Hillsdale Crest Rainfall-Derived Infiltration and Inflow Project, number E10941, through the exercise of the city's eminent domain authority.
Colleagues, Commissioner Fish is out this week, and he asked me to introduce this item. Before us today is an ordinance that authorizes environmental services to acquire certain property rights via eminent domain in order to construct a sewer and stormwater improvement project in Hillsdale. This project will protect public health and our environment through upgrades that will reduce the possibility of sewer overflows into the streets, private property, and creeks. Project Manager Henry Young is here from the Bureau of Environmental Services for a brief presentation on this ordinance.
Good morning. My name is Patty Nelson. I'm a senior engineer with Environmental Services. Bill Ryan apologizes. He wasn't able to attend today, so I'm here in support of Henry. With us, we also have John Deo from our right-of-way department to answer questions on the ordinance as well, and Aaron Abrams for our public involvement and outreach. Henry?
Thanks, Patty. Good morning, Mayor and Commissioner. My name is Henry Young. Like I said, I'm the project manager for this project. This ordinance before you is to authorize Bureau of Environmental Services to acquire sewer easement to the eminent domain process such that we can construct the Hillsdale Crest project. This project, along with other works, accumulates all the works that we have done so far to try to control the sanitary sewer overflow in the at the DeWitt manhole in the Hillsdale area. The Hillsdale Crest project, the RDII project, when constructed, will reduce inflow and infiltration into our sanitary sewer system in the northern portion of the Hillsdale neighborhood in southwest Portland. As these storm lines was constructed in the 50s, and as our sanitary system ages, they develop cracks and separations. These deficiencies allow stormwater and groundwater that infiltrates into the system. At large flows, they can kind of overwhelm the system and resulted in a sanitary overflow, and it gets in the ditches and then eventually gets into our rivers. So what we are proposing to do is using a cure-in-place pipe lining, CIPP methodology, to line 18,500 linear foot of pipe, as well as 226 laterals. This project started when we have frequent sanitary sewer overflow at the DeWitt manhole. If you take a look on your top right, that is where the overflow is. And in 2011, Bureau of Environmental Services and DEQ enter into a mutual agreement and order to control this sanitary sewer overflow. The MAO mandates a 40% reduction in infiltration and inflow. So BES have taken 4 projects so far, and 2 of them are completed, and 1 is in construction, and the other one is the Hillsdale Crest project that is currently in design.
So
And
tell me again what an MAO is.
mutual agreement and order.
Thank you.
Yeah, so after we constructed the 2 projects, the Upper Hillsdale and Middle Hillsdale Phase 1, we step back and we take data from gauges that we set in the manholes, and we evaluate how effective these work was done to control these repairs, control these overflows. And we found that when we lined the main line, the public and private laterals, we got a 73% reduction in inflow and infiltration. And in the main line, if you just do the main line only, we got a 57% reduction in the inflow and infiltration. So these works have been really effective in controlling the inflows. And Hillsdale Crest is the last project that we need to complete to satisfy the MAO. DEQ has already closed the MAO as of July 5th, 2017. These areas were previously in the unincorporated Monoma County. When we have this project, we started looking at doing research, and we found that a section of Southwest Sweetbriar Drive was vacated by Monoma County. And we have sanitary lines along the vacated area. So part of our work is trying to reestablish this right-of-way. And this right-of-way kind of bounds two property owners that we're going to need to get easement from. BS, public involvement, as well as PBOT, right-of-way staff have been in contact with both property owners to inform them of the effort to acquire the easement. And this acquisition work will have really low to moderate impact on the properties. And we have funding available to acquire the easement. And with the mayor and commissioner authorizing this ordinance would allow us, BS and PBOT, to begin the appraisal process and negotiation with property owner to acquire the easement. Thank you so much for your time. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Commissioner Fritz.
Will you have to dig up the properties to fix the pipe?
No. This is, CIPP is a minimal invasive process. We shoot the lining in from the manholes. So that's why we choose that, because we don't have to dig it up.
And I appreciate that you contacted both property owners. I'm assuming that you didn't hear any. Have you heard any concerns?
No, they're aware. They say they were very receptive to so both public involvement and as well as the right-of-way have contacted them. So
thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Public testimony on this item. Very good. This is a first reading of a non-emergency ordinance. It moves to second reading. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, item 924 is a second reading.
924, approve findings to authorize an exemption to the competitive bidding requirements and authorize the use of the alternative contracting method of construction manager, general contractor, in connection with the Bull Run filtration project for an estimated amount of $350 million.
This is a second reading of a non-emergency ordinance. We've already heard the presentation and taken public testimony. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, please call the roll, Sue.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
So I've received a preliminary briefing on this from Director Mike Sturr, and I'm satisfied that this contract doesn't lock us into any particular quantity, method, or location for these services. We will be establishing a public process to look at those three issues and bring those back to council sometime in the fairly near future. With this, I'm very comfortable with this contract. Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The ordinance is adopted. Item 925, also a second reading.
925, authorize a contract with Brown and Caldwell, Inc. for the program management and support services for the Bull Run filtration projects for a total not to exceed amount of $67,891,398. and $398.
Please call the roll.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thanks to Commissioner Nick Fish for getting both this and the previous item done in his last days as the Water Commissioner. I appreciate getting them tied up, finished up. I'll be bringing my last parks thing next week, which I hope will also be of service to the city in terms of finishing up various projects. This one is just getting started, obviously. I'm particularly interested to see that there is a shared responsibility for the community benefits agreement with Brown and Caldwell to help figure out what exactly that looks like for this project. And again, there'll be community involvement on that. Aye.
Wheeler.
I want to particularly thank Commissioner Fish and the entire staff of the Water Bureau, both for this item and the prior item. They were large, complex issues, and I felt very well served by those who are providing briefings and information and follow-up. I want to thank everybody for their hard work on these that they have done and the hard work yet to come in terms of delivering both of these projects. I vote aye. The ordinance is adopted. We had two items, I believe, Sue, that were pulled. Was it 907 and 908 were pulled from the consent agenda?
Correct.
Very good. And I believe we have legal counsel is going to,
Who pulled them? You want to do 907 first and call the item? And there are different attorneys for each item.
oh, I see. Thank you.
Sorry.
907, please.
907, authorize the city attorney to appeal the final order in the matter of the City of Portland, Oregon administrative hearing, case number 2017 ABC 00832, Building Codes Division, case number C 2015-0200, in regards to automatic sprinkler systems in nightclubs.
Very good.
And it's my understanding that Lightning and Mr. Walsh pulled the item.
Very good. Is there somebody from legal counsel?
Yes.
There is,
yes,
name
there is.
is here. Yeah.
We also have our Fire Marshal, Nate Takara.
Good morning.
Good morning. Naomi Sheffield from the City Attorney's Office and Nate Takara, our Fire Marshal. I'm happy to answer any questions, or I can give a short rundown of what this is, whatever you'd like.
Or I can give a more colorful.
Yeah, Mr.
rundown.
Walsh, why don't you go ahead and give your testimony, and then that'll help the legal counsel and the fire marshal.
We would really like some of this stuff answered, because reading the supporting documentation, very confusing. And it sounds like
Excuse me, Mr. Walsh, could you come to the microphone so that the captioners can get what you're saying? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you.
Good morning. Again, my name is Joe Walsh. I represent Individuals for Justice. Lightning and Individuals for Justice had concerns about this because we were a little confused. It seems when you read the supporting documentation that you can get on the computer by clicking on the number, it sounds like the nightclubs are saying to you that they don't want automatic sprinkler systems in their establishments that would have a requirement of over 100 people. So to us, what they were saying to you was, we're not going to put sprinklers in, even though we have 100 people in the place. Even though in the last year or so, we've had nightclubs that have really wiped out a lot of people. Is our understanding correct? I mean, I know there's a lobby, and I know there's hearings, and I know there's an administrative decision that you want to appeal. Now, normally I'm on the wrong side of the city attorney. But when we read this, we just said, that doesn't make sense. Why would someone say to you, we're not going to do this and make the people feel safe when they come into our establishment? So we were a little confused. And we didn't want it on the consent agenda because if we're right, that's an outrage. You know, we should be outraged with these people that are influencing this kind of decision. And we should fully support you on this one, and we hope you win. We would really like to see you go in there and kick butt. Now, I don't know the position of Mr. Lightning. Often we have different positions. He pulled it, and I said I would speak on it. I don't know what to say in his position. I think he had the same problem, I hope, that it just didn't make sense, you know? So we support you, if what I'm saying is accurate.
Maybe
Because I had to take
why don't
two
I take a
actions.
stab at giving my overview of what this is all about, and then the fire marshal and the attorney can fill in the blanks. When I became fire commissioner in 2013, my first action was to bring an ordinance to council to require existing nightclubs that didn't have sprinkler systems to install them if they have a certain occupancy. Very simple, intended to save lives, avoid tragedies that have happened in other cities. and we believe we have the full authority under our fire code to do this.
Sure.
Well, the state has kicked and screamed every bit of the way ever since we did that. They've taken us to court, they defied court rulings, and have written new orders to get around this. They believe they have the authority, and only the state has the authority. And, you know, I'm sad to say that these are people who work for Governor Brown, and I've talked to Governor Brown about making this go away, because I feel we are on the side of the angels here, trying to save lives, particularly of young people. And this has been fought now we're in our, what, 6th year of fighting? We've already done it. The nightclubs have already done the work, because we required them to do the work, but they've got the ear of the state, and the ear of the state is still saying, fight, fight, fight. So this is where we are. We're in another appeal of another state decision saying we were wrong.
Well, we hope you keep fighting on this one,
Okay, we
because
will.
you're right, you're on the side of the angels.
We will.
Thank you, Mr. Walsh. And did you pull 908 as well?
I didn't pull 908. It's a little confusing to us, but it sounds like we're also going to say that we approve or we like this. We would like a little bit, maybe explanation of what we think. And this seems to be that you're going to file a brief in support.
Okay, why don't you just hang tight? I just didn't want you to have to go all the way back to your seat if you were also going to testify on that. Why don't we take up this item first? Please call the roll on 907. I'm sorry, 907 is a non-emergency ordinance, so it moves to second.
Oh, it's a resolution.
Oh, thank you for saving us. Thank goodness. Good. Please call the roll on the resolution 907.
Saltzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you, Commissioner Saltzman, for your leadership on this and for continuing to press. And it's something that I think maybe we should take up with the League of Oregon Cities, because it definitely is an infringement on home rule. Aye.
Wheeler.
This is a no-brainer. Of the things that come to the Portland City Council frequently, they're difficult, they're challenging, it's hard to see what the right, this is not one of those issues. This is a very clear issue, and all you need to do is Google ghost ship San Francisco, and you see the consequences of not taking steps like this. And of course, we should have the ability in the city of Portland to enforce codes around life safety matters. So I vote aye. The resolution is adopted. Next item, 908, if you could go ahead and read that.
908, authorize city attorney to appear as amicus curiae to support city's interest in recreational use of public lands.
Greetings.
Good morning, Denis Vanier for the City Attorney's Office, and I'm happy to answer any questions about this item.
Could you just give us a couple of sentences for those watching and wondering what this is?
Yes,
Thanks.
so as Mr. Walsh stated, this has to do with the city filing a friend of the court brief, mostly in support of the state in two cases. So two recent decisions by the Court of Appeals, the McCormick case and the Ortega case. Those have to do with the recreational use immunity statute. And what that statute does, so it was enacted by the Oregon legislature quite a while ago, and the purpose of the statute is to encourage recreational use of land, both public land and private land. And the way it does that is by essentially saying landowners, whether private or public, if you open your land to recreation, then you will be immune against certain types of claims, basically negligence claims. And the idea is to incentivize the public use of land, the recreational use of land by the public. The two recent decisions, Ortega and McCormick, have really cut down on the scope of that immunity. They're part of a trend in decisions by the Court of Appeals recently. And the concern is that the reasoning of those cases would disincentivize the recreational use of public land and private land. And so we want to weigh in on that aspect to just, again, further the legislative purpose, which is to encourage land to be open to the public for recreation.
And for those of us who have rusty Latin, amicus curiae?
So that stands for friend of the court. So essentially, we are not a party to the case. We are simply providing our own perspective about the case to the court.
Very good, thank you. And who else had pulled this or wanted to testify on this matter? Okay, great. Mr. Walsh, any further thoughts on this?
We're a little more nervous about this one than the previous one. However, we haven't read the brief. There's no way for us to take a position on this. We're really not sure what the city is saying here. It seems that it's outside the park system, and it's land that the city owns, and they want to open that up to recreation, but there's a piece of it that bothers us, that they don't want to take responsibility if there's something goes wrong. That's the way we're reading it, and again, we haven't read the briefs, and so we're a little bit handicapped on this. We would take just a neutral position on this, because we can't endorse it and we can't fight it because we don't have enough information. I would say this in a general sense. On the first item, 07, it was exciting that you were doing that. And you put it on the consent agenda. I don't know how you make your decisions on consent agenda. But there are times where you want to bring stuff out that you're doing really good stuff. We like to hear that. You know, most of the time I sit up here and I nail you. And you just vote anyway the way you want to vote. And we know that. We just go on record, you know, to say that there's opposition. But a lot of times you use consent agenda for things that you should celebrate and say to the people of Portland, look what we're doing. You know, we're doing really good stuff here. So I don't understand how you make the decisions on consent agenda. It's supposed to be non-controversial, problematic issues that go under consent agenda. Good example, paying the light bills. Nobody's going to argue about that. So you put it on the consent agenda and you box it all and you do one vote. That's the way it should go. But often you guys miss opportunities to brag. And there's nothing wrong with bragging if you're right. Just got to be right when you brag. But on this one, you could have bragged. And you did. You bragged to me, Commissioner Salzman. And I appreciate that. So on the second one, it was a little confusing, and we get a little nervous, and we haven't read the briefs. So, and I don't know what Lightning was going to say about this. So I have to end it.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Please call the roll on the resolution, Sue.
Salzman.
Aye.
Udaly.
Aye.
Fritz.
Thank you for your work. Aye.
Wheeler.
Aye. The resolution is adopted. Thank you, and we are adjourned.